All right. Hell yeah. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve-Poikonen, and I'm hanging out here in Central California. I'm going to be joined here pretty soon by the one and only Vanessa Beeley. Weird and bad internets in Syria today, which is kind of a fallout from round after round after round of Israeli missile strikes. The Large Hadron Collider is getting fired up. And we'll be talking about that real soon. But I know since Vanessa probably doesn't have a whole lot of time before the interwebs crap out on her, returning to the show, first guest of the new year, our friend Vanessa Beeley. It is lovely to see you. How are you? Welcome back.
Hi. I actually have two problems. I have internet and electricity because my kind of battery inverter thing is failing at the moment because electricity's been so shit here for the
Well,
last month.
thank you for spending some time with us, and I appreciate it.
Oh,
We can jump right into what's been going on in Syria, particularly in terms of the port attack that happened just a few days ago,
mm,
um, and
ah,
and the sort of response that the Russian government has had and the rifts that that's created. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, I mean, basically, in the month of December, there were two attacks on Latakia port by Israel. The second attack, which came, I think, in the early hours of the morning of the 27th, so 2 days after Christmas. And those were missiles launched by F-16s from Mediterranean waters. Now, the reason given by Russian officials and the Ministry of Defense for the failure of the Syrian air defenses to respond was the fact that there was a Russian military plane in line of fire. Of course, this isn't the first time that Israel's used either passenger or military planes as cover for their attacks and to prevent Syrian air defenses responding. I've actually written an article about this fairly recently for RT after the attacks on Syrian air defense bases prior to Christmas. But what this latest attack has generated, let's say, is a wave of animosity from Syrian people and Syrian military commentators towards Russia, which is, this is a relatively new phenomenon. Back in 2015, of course, Russia intervened at the behest of the Syrian government and after conversations with Qasem Soleimani, who, of course, Trump assassinated this month when was it? 2020? 2020, I think. Russia has played a really crucial and pivotal role in the liberation of Syrian territory. But of course, in the process, Russia has also served its own interests, as any super force in the world today is going to. And everybody who's pragmatically analyzing the geopolitics in the region can recognize this fact. But the fact is, in 2015, Syria was fighting on over 100 fronts. It is now fighting on less than 25. So, that information was given to me recently by a friend in the military. So, we have to see this as a military success, but there is a huge chasm between political agenda and military agenda, right? The Russian leadership, military leadership, is working hand in hand with the Syrian Arab Army leadership, and they have been very successful in liberating areas that are occupied by US coalition terrorist proxies. But the double attacks on Latakia has severely wounded, I would say, Syrian dignity, because what has been destroyed, it's not, as Israel will always claim, Iranian arms depots, Iranian whatever, militia, storehouses, etc. No, what this has destroyed is incoming foodstuffs, basically. Oil storage, all essential infrastructure and essential items for Syrian civilian survival. So, of course, this is a war crime because you're not allowed to do that under any circumstances. But of course, there's zero outrage in the UN, right? There's barely any recognition of these attacks in Western media. And of course, they run with the Israeli narrative, which is we're attacking Iran, even though Iran actually has the right to be in Syria, just as Russia does. But of course, the questions that have been raised is, and even I saw on social media a comment from a very high level Syrian military commander making a direct appeal to his opposite number in the Russian military, with whom he fought, I think, in Aleppo and possibly in Ghouta, but I know in Aleppo. And he said to him, look, we are at war. And if Israel engages with us militarily, do you really think it's a good enough excuse to say that a Russian military personnel aircraft is to be used as an excuse or to be used effectively as cover for Israel's attack? Because we are at war. So you know the risk. And the likelihood is, also speaking to other military personnel on the ground here, Russia would have had prior warning of the attack because, of course, Haimamin base in Tartus is very close to Latakia port. Now, on another level, let's say on the more pragmatic political level, of course, Russian oligarchs now are seeing Syria as a business venture, right? So they see the opportunity, and we know that they are entering in very big numbers, and they are discussing future trade. But of course, that future trade will go through Tartus port. So all incoming and outgoing trade will be managed through Tartus port, which is under control pretty much of the Russians in Haimamin base. So one could argue, and one could speculate, that the Israeli targeting and destruction of huge areas of Latakia port, which also are reminiscent of the destruction of Beirut port, of course, and the reduction of the ability of Lebanon to trade only through Tripoli port, which is pretty much under the control of the British and British intelligence. We know that through the anonymous leaked documents that show that the same protagonists that were infiltrating Syrian civil society and security apparatuses for years prior to the war in 2011 have also been doing very much the same thing in Beirut, and Tripoli is one of their primary targets. Why? Because, of course, it's strategic placement, the fact that now it's the only remaining port, the fact that it's close to borders with Syria, and particularly to Homs, which is another area of hydrocarbon production, oil production, etc. So, as I said, it's not too much of a stretch to say, let me put it this way, the Israeli tax on Latakia will serve the Russian agenda to push all trade, particularly between Russia and Syria, through Tartus, and give them control over everything and reduce the ability of Iran to deliver into Syria. Because, of course, Iran is delivering fuel into Latakia port, also fuel which then goes on to Lebanon through Syria, right?
So does it signal like a relationship between Israel and Russia at a political level that people aren't necessarily seeing on the ground?
I think there's a divide between, as I said, the military agenda and strategy and the political agenda and strategy. And of course, then above that, we also have to see the COVID project strategy, right? Which kind of is over above and beyond the kind of geopolitical conflict level. So what COVID has done is it's added other layers to our discussions when we're talking about what's going on. In my opinion, the COVID project is one thing, and of course it's about depopulation control, surveillance, ID 2020, etc., etc. But they need the wars to continue, because the wars bring political power, they bring money into the military-industrial complex, etc., just as they always have done. And of course, they help with the kind of whole eugenics depopulation project. I mean,
Yeah.
So I don't think we can see one really without the other. And of course, the strategy that's being used to push through the COVID project is being enabled by the same players that were pushing, for example, the conflict against Syria. The same organizations like Cory Morningstar picked up the fact that Purpose is pushing the COVID project. I picked up the fact that Ein Seidel, the producer of the White Helmet movie in 2016 that won the Oscar, is now also producing, pro-COVID promos, right? So we're seeing this kind of interlocking complex that is pushing and influencing behavior for both the war projects and the COVID projects. And that's what I've been saying from the beginning. You can't really separate the two out, because they both effectively have the same end in sight. Now, politically, for me, this means that Russia now is in a position of effectively power in the region. I mean, it's the main broker of negotiations between Turkey, between Israel, and even between the US. I mean, it's no mistake that Russia has an airbase now in Kamishli in the northeast. So it's basically mingling with America on an almost daily basis, right?
Yeah.
And personally, I don't believe that Russia is not benefiting from some access to the oil reserves in the northeast, right? Just as America is, just as the SDF are. I mean, I think, in any situation like this, we have to be realistic. We have to recognize the fact that there are no saviors on white horses, like from Putin to whoever. It doesn't actually matter. They will all have their own national agendas. And again, as I said, this overarching oligarchical agenda, which is actually going to be pulling the strings more and more in the future. So, I don't think anyone should really be surprised. Now, the other aspect of this, of course, people are saying, why isn't Russia responding to Israel? Why isn't Syria responding to Israel? Now, from Syria's perspective, I can say that it's not the right time for them now to escalate military intervention with Israel. But what you might see in the near future, if you remember when Russia brokered the Dada peace deal in 2018, it gave assurances to Israel that Hezbollah and Iran would withdraw from the border with the occupied Golan territory. Now, I'm pretty certain from people I've asked here that Hezbollah and Iran are back on that border. If I had to predict something, I would say that if Syria focuses on anything, any kind of escalation with Israel, it will be over and regarding the Golan territory. And that is something that Russia kind of can't interfere with, because, it's a recognized fact under international law that Israel has illegally annexed this territory. Right. So I think if Syria plays a pretty intelligent game, which it has done up until now, the presidency has played it's played the long game, right? And it's not responded in a provocative or even firefighting, reactionary way to Israel's attacks. But of course, on the street level, there is frustration, and there is now a level of animosity towards Russia that you definitely didn't see before, because of course now it's targeting the heart of Syria, right? Before it was hitting military bases, it was hitting air bases, it was hitting air defense bases. I mean, it's destroyed one of the landing strips in Mezze to the south of Damascus. So there's a clear indication that Israel is looking to push for an escalation because it suits Israel's timing. So in my opinion, and in the opinion of people like Kivok Almasyan, Damascus will play the longer game. And of course, that is not going to be music to the ears of people on the street who are suffering from no electricity, no food. And then Israel is destroying their incoming, long life food stuff that was sitting in Latakia port. And of course, this is also doubling down on the Caesar sanctions from the US, right?
Yeah.
So Israel is kind of, in my view, these attacks are serving kind of everyone's agenda, including Israel's, because Israel is sort of stoking the bear. It's trying to get a reaction. It could also
Israel has two rabid war criminals in Bennett and Benny Gantz at defense. Both of whom have just bloodlust in their eyes where Iran is concerned, and if they have to annihilate Syria on the way, they're more than happy to do that. So no, I agree with that 100%.
And and Iran, I mean, I don't think there is a high risk of nuclear here. I think what Israel is way more worried about is the fact that both Yemen and Iran can basically target Tel Aviv right now, right, with ordinary long-range missiles. So we've seen, of course, America and Israel getting involved in the war in Yemen to try and suppress the Ansarullah movement and to try and prevent this kind of, in its view, this empowerment of an Iranian proxy. Of course, Ansarullah is not a proxy of Iran. It's a national resistance movement, not only consisting of the Houthi, but it's actually quite distanced from Iran. Iran has given some technological assistance, but not very much diplomatic assistance, and neither has Russia. So Yemen is basically fighting this war pretty much on its own. But the fact that it's seen as a threat by major world powers, hats off to the Yemenis for withstanding, what is it now, almost 7 years of war. They're only 3 years behind Syria in the length of the war that they've resisted. So you're absolutely right. We thought Netanyahu was right wing, but Naftali Bennett is kind of like off the scale right wing, and talk about terrorists. We've got, but then of course, we're awarding knighthoods to terrorists in the UK.
Fucking Tony Blair. Hey, wait a second. Before I feel like we should pause for a moment. We should do some very, very good news. Congratulations to our good friend Whitney Webb on the birth of her baby boy. Damn near 9 pounds. New Year's Eve. No drugs. Fucking metal. That wasn't by choice, but man, dude, we love the hell out of you, and glad that you're safe, healthy, baby, safe, healthy, all that good stuff, dude. Whitney was one of many people this morning, about 15-20 minutes after a piece dropped on Twitter that I have to pull up real quick, because Vanessa, you've heard me rant about this before too. And this is topical. It is because we could get into some like COVID mayhem stuff as well for however much longer we have. We'll probably hop off of YouTube for that, but I have to pull this up. And hey, Gloria Jones, welcome. Gloria had to run some errands. She's in here now. Glad to have her with us.
Yay! Happy New Year! Happy new crazy, not normal year.
So here we are. The world's largest particle accelerator,
Here we
the
go.
Large
again.
Hadron Collider at CERN, will start up with twice the power in March. After a 3-year break, ladies and gentlemen, our moment has arrived. The collider is being fired back up twice the normal power. All we have to do is huck something in it that is going to get us into a better timeline. Now, we have a 50-50 shot. It can't be dumber. It can't be dumber.
What are you proposing?
The last time the marmot got stuck, when the marmot got stuck in it, it hurled us into the dumbest timeline. I'm advocating. What I'm saying is there's a 50-50 shot. We could either go to a better one or a worse one. It will not be dumber. It can only be better or worse.
So what are you? What
I am suggesting that we crowdfund a kidnap and toss Henry Kissinger into the Large Hadron Collider mission.
But won't that make the timeline like?
No, it'll be a sacrifice it'll be a sacrifice to the collider to atone for so many of humanity's wrongs.
Okay, that I like the way you put that.
Yeah, deal. I'll go along with it. Is he still alive?
Unfortunately,
yes. Fucking 2021 got the wrong Kissinger.
Seriously,
they got his brother in.
They got his brother. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever seen the movie Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, but it's like a Johnny Cash. It's every rock and roll movie kind of parodied. But there's a moment where, like in the Johnny Cash story, like Johnny Cash's brother died. He kind of makes his dad out to seem like the wrong kid died. So they take that line in the movie to have the dad say to the kid throughout his life, "The wrong kid died." Well, when Henry Kissinger's brother died, the first thing that popped into my head was those scenes from that movie. The wrong kid died. Yeah, because that's all that I could really take from that. Like, pussy ass
it's like it's like these people go on forever.
They got Rumsfeld and Sheldon Adelson.
Yeah,
could we get a change?
You know, I mean, like it's not like there weren't some highlights, but Tony Blair getting the knighthood, that's just
but it's not just Tony Blair, it's the entire COVID project list of psychopaths,
the peanut crew and them.
I mean, it's the AstraZeneca vaccine creator, the Chris Whitty. I mean, there can't be any more Deadeye than him. Valance, he got an increased knighthood. Like, I mean, if people want evidence that this is a COVID cult, I mean, it's insane. The Northern Ireland Health Secretary, the officer, whatever, same as Chris Whitty. God, I don't know.
You know what? Let's get into this while we still have you. I'm gonna grab the Rockfin link, throw it in the chat for the YouTube folks. You guys, come check us out. You on Rockfin, on Odyssey, basically anywhere but here. We love you guys. Happy New Year. And we will see you at places where they let us, have grown-up conversations in a nuanced manner about controversial and complicated topics, and not get punished for it.